One of my products is the new Augmented software that we're going to spend the next little bit of time talking about. Before we jump into that, though, I want to just give you a little bit of history. About 2 years ago, 2.5, our founder, Fred, put a whole bunch of us in a room and proposed this idea. And we all kind of looked at him and went, "You want to do what?" Then we did something that we've never done before. We actually kept it a secret for 2 years. Which if you've been around HTC for a while, you know that that's something we're really bad at. We wanted to do a lot of research. We wanted to figure out really where we could be in this world. And we wanted to study a little bit of what's going on in the visualization world, in the programming world, and ways we could do things a little bit different. And one of the things that we found is that while there are a lot of really fantastic visualizing systems out there, they all kind of end the day you get to the venue door. You spend a lot of time using it in the pre-programming, the pre-visualization concepts, and the day you actually get into the space, that kind of goes out the door. You transfer over into the space, and you have your actual space to work with. And Fred started wondering if there was something that we could do to maybe change that up a little bit and introduce a product that really was there with you from concept all the way to closing night. And as part of that, we wanted to focus a little bit less on the visualization concept and a little bit more on making a true 3D programming tool. Something that can help you in your programming, speed up your process, aid your workflow, and really get into that world. So that's what we started working on. And we took a number of developers and had them start researching different ways we could get into that world, different ways that we could make it easier to get into that world. And today, I've got some I'm going to show you. So I'm going to just sort of take you through the whole thing. We'll talk through it. And at the end, I'll invite you all up to come up and take a look and get your hands on it yourself and really experience it. So let's just jump right on in. So right off the bat, the first thing we need to talk about is what actually is Augmented and where it's going to live. And so Augmented will be a free software release as part of the EOS 3.0 software release. It has two different options of where it can live. And the big thing we need to talk about is, as hopefully you all have heard, as part of EOS 3.0, we will be discontinuing support for the XP machines and only working on the Windows 7 and greater machines as part of 3.0. And Augmented will follow suit in that. We do have a couple other small hardware restrictions. So Augmented can live in two different places. It can either live on a standalone Mac or PC networked into the system, or on any of our consoles that have a display port, you'll have the option to have it installed natively on the hardware. As long as it has at least one display port on it, you can add that in. Now, like the Geo I have in front of me, I don't actually have a display port, so I've got this running off of a standalone computer. Now, one thing to note, because of some of our requirements in that hardware, the reason we're not allowing any of the ones without the display port is that just doesn't have the graphics processing that we require to do some of the work we're doing here. And if you ever want to run it on the console, but you want a little bit more of graphics, you want it to look a little better, that's where that secondary option for having a network-connected Mac or PC. We do have some limitations in our quality levels that will be on the console, just because we never want to get anywhere near affecting your output rate, your programming, slow your system down at all. We want to make sure it's definitely there for you as a tool. Question? Yeah.
So if you have for say a PC to give you, I don't know, if you're on an Ion, you want more monitors, you run a client with your on a PC with Nomad, are you able to kind of open up your client view as well as your Augment on there?
Yeah, basically Augmented will be built directly into Nomad. For today's demonstration, I am showing it as two different pieces of software. That's just what we're doing during development, but yeah, it's going to be natively networked into Nomad. We'll jump in and take a look at that. All right, so let's jump into the software itself. In order to start working in a 3D space, you first need the 3D space. So how many of you are working or drafting in 3D already? Great, good amount of hands. If you're not, that's perfectly fine. One of the big mantras that we'll be talking about throughout this class and throughout Augmented in general is that all you really need is a floor. Walls are nice. Anything else is a bonus that you add into your system. Okay? So let's take a look inside of the Augmented software, and we're just going to dive right in. So there are two modes that we can function inside of Augmented. The first one is just going to be our basic interaction mode, and you have some options to choose whether you want this to hide the toolbar and make it a little bit more full screen. As we all know, workspace is massively important. The more space you have to work with, the easier it is for you to work. So you could choose whether you want to be in full screen or if you want to show that toolbar there. Then you have the option to go into our edit mode. And edit mode's where we're going to be setting up our scene, working with all of our bits and pieces here. Now, one of the biggest things we didn't want to do in Augmented was make you all have to learn another drafting software. There are so many of them out there. I've been learning way too many of them recently myself. And if I have to learn another shortcut for draw a line, I'm going to scream. So we really wanted to make it so we could take advantage of the work that you've already done, all of the pieces you might have already assembled. So instead of starting with all the different drafting options, we instead started with a rather massive amount of file types that you can import in. And you'll see a lot of the really common file types here, things like Collada or OBJ or DXF or FBX, things that you're going to be hopefully pretty familiar with. And we'll take a look at importing in a second. The other thing that we're doing, I'm going to just get this right out of the way, we are doing a full integration with Vectorworks, 2 different paths. One is using Vectorworks Live Link, which allows us to actually connect directly from Vectorworks to Augmented. And anything that is patched and set up in Vectorworks will automatically port over into Augmented, and any change you make in either one will go bidirectionally. So if you update your Vectorworks drawing, it'll automatically update your Augmented model, and vice versa. The other option we're going to do if you don't want to be in the live link situation is just the ability to export a Augmented package from Vectorworks and open that right up in, trying to just keep that procedure as slim and as easy as possible for everybody, because we all know that any other steps just make things take longer and become more problematic. But let's jump back in and just take a look inside of Augmented, how we're going to work around here. So talking just a little bit about navigation, we've got 2 different options. You can use your arrow keys to move around and your mouse to fly around. So I'm just right-clicking my mouse and moving around here as I hold one of the arrow keys down. When you're in edit mode, we also did add the WASD options, if you're familiar with that from modern video games. Both there just for your use and options. When you're in the sort of the live interaction mode, it's just going to be the arrow keys because we use that WASD for EOS commands as well. So as I come in here, first thing I'm going to do is import an object. Now I have a full set of stock objects here. So we've got architectural options, furniture, objects, outdoor, people, shapes, some default venues for you to play around with. Just a whole bunch of different options here. And if you want to add any of these objects in, all you have to do is come find which one you're looking for. So I'll just grab a chair here. I can throw that in. It's going to come into my origin point. And then I can place this just really wherever I want. So we've got all the standard tools for position, for XYZ position, for rotation, and for scale. So if you want a really big chair, got the option for that. It's a little Brechtian, so we'll put that back. But yeah, we can place this all around. You do also have all of the different options here for manually entering any of that information if you don't want to use any of the tools. We've also added some options like snap to ground plane. We're working on some other snap to tools, some quick rotation concepts, just to make it really easy for you to place and work. Now, if we want to import an object, I'm going to come in here, go to import. I've got a couple of different options. I'm going to keep my full hierarchy for what we're doing right now. Go into my folder here, and I've got an FBX file that I created in Vectorworks and just exported that I'm going to bring in. You come in here, you set any of your options, and you know what, we're playing in metric right now, but let's switch over just so we can see that in feet and inches. So now, I know, a couple groans there. I wish. You got both options, so you can pick or choose whichever one you like. So now I've imported that table. It's in my library over here. If I want to drag that and bring that in, I have that option, and here is that model that I just brought in, and I can place that really wherever I want. And you can drop as many of these pieces in as you'd like. So as we try to recreate our space as accurate as possible, and I'm just sort of estimating where these are right now. But I've done this presentation once or twice, and I have a pretty good idea where they are. So I can come over here and just sort of arrange this. Oh, that table was here yesterday. That's gone now. So there you go. And if you don't want something, you can select it and you can delete it. There we go. Happy little accident there. So the point of this is you can bring in as many pieces as you'd like. So if you have that bed that's just used in Act 1, bring that in. That full stage front that you've designed meticulously in Vectorworks that's used in Act 2, go ahead and bring that in. Add in as many pieces as you want. The other thing we're going to give you the ability to do is associate physical non-fixture objects in the augmented space to EOS channels. And what that allows you to do is set intensity, so if it's on or off, to change your visibility of it in the scene. So you can say, all right, great, this piece of scenery is only present in Act 1. In my Act 2 cues, that channel is off, therefore it won't show up. We're also allowing you to put in XYZ position information on that channel so you can change where something is from point 1 or point 2. You can also put an effect on your table and make it fly around. That's quite entertaining. Maybe not so practical, but it's fun. So as we're working with this, we've added in all of our pieces. Now, I just had a couple of pieces of scenery in here, some truss in that I put in before you guys joined me. And that's all well and good. I can push this around. That's all fantastic. But let's talk about the important part. Let's add some fixtures in and actually talk about turning on light and controlling light. So to do that, I'm just going to really quickly switch back over to EOS for a second so you guys can see what I'm working on. And I'm going to jump into Patch. So inside of Patch now, we have a new tab inside of Patch, which is Augmented. So I'm going to go into Augmented, and, oh, sorry, I'm not mirroring that quite as well. We'll work on that. But basically what I have is 3 different columns here, X, Y, and Z, and for each one I have meters, feet, inches, and degrees. And as soon as I come in here and select that fixture and set a value, so I'm just going to give it a little bit of Z in this case, notice that fixture shows up right in the back here. I can go around and take a look at it. There it is, just in my origin. I have my origin back in the back corner just because that was the easiest thing for me to measure in this space. You can set your origin to be wherever you want it to be. At this point, I can now select my fixture. I can move it around anywhere I want in here. And that information is going to be reflected bidirectionally in both Augmented and in EOS Patch. So if I come in the EOS Patch and say, you know what, I just want a little bit more Z here, or if I come into Augmented and I move that around, in either case, those are going to move around and allow you to see and work with whatever you want. So we'll come out here, and let's just say we have a fixture right about there. Now, if you know all of your information for your fixtures, you can enter that all in and go to town. If I go back into Live for a second here and switch back over to Augmented, and I'm going to just say, great, give me my channel 11 on, turn it on. So now, some other things we can do with this fixture. I'm going to go into my database tab. I've got the option to set information like gobo, gel, beam angle. So let's say I actually want this to be 19 degrees here. Grab my channel. Sorry, I can type. There we go. I want to set this as a 19-degree beam angle. I want to put this in R27. I want to set a particular gobo. You can customize all of this information. And now, when we take a look at it inside of Augmented, it's going to have all that information for conventionals. The other thing we've done is given you a conventional focus tool. So you could come in here, grab this fixture, rotate it around, and place it wherever you want. But the conventional focus tool allows me to just say, great, I want this particular fixture to be focused over here or over here. And just really quickly grab your fixture and focus that accordingly. So giving you a really powerful tool for that. I really wanted to break up the conventional focus tool and the moving light focus tool so you don't accidentally grab all your fixtures and say you want to focus all over here and redo your conventional patch mid-show. That'd be bad. So giving you those two separate tools, allowing you to really work with it and control. We don't have shutters in here quite yet, but that's coming real soon. You'll have the shutter tool in there to be able to set your conventional shutter information. Now, as we know, rigs are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So maybe we don't want to spend all that time figuring out and putting in all that information directly into Augmented. Now, if you have it in your Vectorworks file, that's great. That'll all come over. We'll take it. But if you just walked into a space, you have no idea where any of the fixtures are, we want to give you a tool that's a little bit easier to work with. So what I have done is inside here, I have placed my 4 cones around the space. And my 4 cones are just positions that I picked 4 points, as long as no more than 2 are in a line, you're good to go. And I took my fixtures, and I have recorded them into 4 different focus palettes. And I'm probably going to blind some people here, and I apologize for that in advance. We'll turn them down a little bit. So I basically just focused all of my fixtures at that focus palette, at one in the back, one on the side, and one in the back on the side over there as well. Okay. And inside of settings, this is in settings for right now, but it's going to be moving pretty soon. We have inside of the Augmented tab, basically the association between focus palettes and focus points, reference points in the space. So inside my augmented model, I put 4 different reference points at the actual space they are. So place a point there, a point there, a point there, and a point there. And inside here, as I mentioned, this is in settings right now. This will be moving to patch, so you can do this on a per channel basis, so you can have different allocations. But what I'm doing here is having this, and I'm going to just switch back to augmented. What I'm going to do is just click this recalculate position option, and that is going to put my fixtures into the space based off of those 4 points of allocation. So the concept is you can come into your space, open it up, put in your floor, because all you need is a floor, grab all of your fixtures, focus them on 4 points, tell us where the 4 points are, and we will automatically calculate where all your fixtures are and put them into your space. So again, just trying to really speed up that process of discovering where all your fixtures are so you can get to work. Now, once we've done that, it's time to actually start having fun with the fixtures. So I can come in here. I'm going to leave edit mode. If I want to select my fixtures, I can do that just with the marquee or a shift and click option. I can do it from the command line, just as usual. Oh, sorry, it switched on me. And now what I can do is say I would like all of my fixtures focused right over here. Let me just select them one more time as I cleared my selection. And say I want my fixtures here. So we've combined these tools together. So a click adds in selection. A click and hold is your focus options. And you know what? It's CUE, and I'm running on a really swanky gaming laptop. Let's go ahead and set this to ultra resolution and see what it really looks like pumped all the way up. So now we can come in here, and I could say, great, I want to focus it on this point. I want to put it on my back wall. I want to put it up on the stage where I am. Different options, different controls. Now, selecting a point here is really powerful, and you can start to see how it behooves you to add as much as possible to your 3D space. Because the more you add in there, the more you're going to have to program with, the more places you can click on and say, I want the light to go to it. Now, working in an XY plane is pretty easy. It's pretty straightforward for me to say, great, I'm standing right here. Jason, will you come up here and give me a hand with something? Sure. Sorry, you're going to be my person from the audience. All right. Do you want to just stand right up here on top? My wonderful assistant. Everybody give it up for Jason. See, I told you you'd regret standing right. Oh, there you go. All right. So we're going to come over here, and I'm going to say, great, I want to focus all of my lights right on the stage here. Let's turn them back on so we can actually see what we're doing here. And I have done a pretty decent job of hitting your feet. Let's see, you're actually a little bit more over there. And that's great. XY is pretty fantastic. But if I want to hit that Z point, I really need to have that point at height. So what I'm going to actually do is set a focus height. And I can do this by pushing and holding my focus button and scrolling my mouse wheel. And if I drop the intensity here, you can see for a second. Now we have that sort of dotted line that sets the height of where we want to focus. And now this allows me to actually choose a point off the ground. So instead of having to try and pick that sort of amorphous place in the air, I can set, okay, here is my XY point. That's easy to calculate. We'll add in the Z. Now I'm just doing this live on the fly here. You can actually also come up and choose a specific height up at the top of where you want to set that, where you want to focus that, allowing you to really choose that. Now that is then maintained, and any point that I now click and focus on anywhere in the space will now use that particular offset. Thank you very much, Jason. All right. So now as we're working with this, any of the objects that we've added into our scene, any of those heights can now be used. So if you have a staircase going up the side and you want to click and focus on the staircase, using those stairs as your actual ground point and then your offset, you can very easily focus in. Now you could add in, we've got models for little people. We can put them all around your stage, but you'd have to have a ton of those to really get all of those different Z points accessible. This just gives you that tool to really quickly jump in and have some control there. Now, as I'm working with this, we've got some other tools that we've added in here, to help us figure out exactly where our lights are and how we're going to work with them. The first one I want to show you is called stick beams. And what stick beams does is it draws a beam from the gate of the fixture all the way down to that intersect point, so wherever we focus that on, allowing you to see exactly where all those fixtures are in the space. Now, one of the great things about stick beams is they don't require intensity. So I can turn off my fixtures, I can still see where all the beams of light are and know exactly where all my fixtures are. But I've got 7 fixtures here. I've got 7 lines here. Not that bad. You've got 200-300 fixtures, you're going to have a screen full of black lines. So we've added some tools to help you with that. So right now I'm just in stick beams all. I can also say just automated fixtures, or probably my favorite, I can say just selected fixtures. So if I come in here and select a different fixture, it's going to just give me the line for that particular fixture. I can then actually do some fun focusing points here. Let's get rid of that Z height we set. Come in here and say, all right, great, I'm going to want this on that first row chairs. Turn them on and hit that first row chairs. So giving us some ability to do a little bit of blind focusing with some assistance there. The other tool I'm going to talk to you about is a focus handle concept. And what that does is it shows us, let me just turn all the stick beams back on so we can see them, where the fixtures are focused and gives us an object to play with. So I'm going to come over here and just turn my 1 through 3 on again. And now I can actually grab this handle and move the beam of light around. And while pan and tilt is fantastic, anybody ever try to do a diagonal movement with pan and tilt? Takes a second, right? So being able to say, all right, I want to grab all of these lights and move them around. Now notice this is also based off my selection. Sorry, let me not blind the front row there. This is based off my selection, so if I have a single fixture selected or no selection, it's just going to allow me to work with that one fixture. If I have multiple selected, it'll move them in tandem. So if you've made that really beautiful fan upstage and you just need to pull it downstage a little bit, but you don't want to mess with how they're oriented, you can actually grab them all, just grab that handle and move them around. It's a really nice tool for how we can actually interact with the world. The next one I'm going to show you is a concept that we're calling fixture tags. And what this allows us to do is see the tag of the fixture not only at the fixture itself, but also potentially where the fixture is focused. Let me turn off the handle so we can see this a little better. And what this allows us to do is get an idea of where the fixtures in our space are and where the beams of light are. What we're trying to do is take a stab at that age-old question of what light is that? So I can look in here and say, hey, I've got a light that really shouldn't be there. That's not very pretty. Oh, that's actually fixture 3. I can grab that. I can make some changes. The point 1 stuff is we're just adding some stuff working with parts. And looks like we've got a little graphic bug in there. That normally won't be there unless it is actually a part fixture. But really giving you that great ability of seeing exactly where your fixtures are in focus. Speaking of seeing where the fixtures are and where they're focused, the last thing in the toolbar I want to show you is a feature called Fixture Point of View. And what that allows me to do is grab a channel and put the camera in the gate of the fixture, allowing me to see from the perspective of the fixture. We'll just turn off my stick beam here for a second. And now, when I move my fixture around, I can see exactly, oh, there it is, found it. Move it around, place it wherever I need to be. We're really trying to take a stab at not having to make you do this every single time you're trying to focus something behind the couch. So giving you some really nice visual tools to work with inside of that. And when we're done with that, we can just leave and go back into whatever our views. Now, speaking of views, let's say I particularly like this view. So I'm going to come in here, I like this, and I'm going to record snapshot 2, and then we'd have a new option here for recording augmented space, and I'm going to just record that. So now at this point, if I want to come over and move my view somewhere else, and I want to then say recall snapshot 2, I can jump right back into that particular view. So you can save all of the views inside of the augmented space into your particular snapshots. Remember, your snapshots can go into your CUE list, so you can actually, as you advance through your CUE list, have certain parts in your show. It's the last day of CUE. Some particular parts in your show that you want to change your orientation and your perspective. So let's say in Act 2 that really big scene piece comes in and I can't really see what's going on upstage, but I got to make sure that's lit. You can record all of that information directly in, save all of that. It is also going to do your settings, so if you want to have one for stick beams and things like that, different control options there, giving you all the ability. All right, well, I won't say that's a good looking look, but it's a look. Let's go ahead and record that into a cue. So I'll record my next cue here. What am I on? 7. And then let's grab some lights and put them in another color and come down, and I'll just zoom them out a little and put them in a gobo, and I will make them sharp. Just some different options and control there. You can see we're still working on perfecting all the different functionalities inside there. Record this into my next cue and be able to save all that. So at this point, I'm going to jump into blind. And inside of blind, just like always, I see all of my cue information. But what's really great here is that Augmented actually exists following the state of the console. So I can now next and last through all of my different cues and get a concept of blind preview. So I want to see exactly what was going on in Q2, Q3, complete with adding in effect information inside of the preview. Now, the one thing that we don't have inside here is really a concept of hitting go and advancing to. We don't really have a go in blind, so we're not doing transitions in here quite yet, but we are definitely doing seeing your individual cues, seeing your concepts of effects, and being able to really visualize, make changes, make corrections, and do that. Now, as part of this, we're also adding 2 new modes to the console, and that is live and blind staging modes. So in a live staging mode, what this will allow us to do, and we're still working on that, I don't have that to show you guys right now, but I'll be happy to tell you about it. What I can do is come in, select a group of fixtures, put them into a staging mode, and put them into a focus palette, put them into a color palette, set some intensity, see that inside of Augmented, decide if that's what I want, and sneak that onto stage. So being able to really sort of queue up a look and bring it in whenever I want. We'll also be adding this feature to blind, and this is where my brain melts a little bit. Previously, any change that you've made inside of blind automatically is saved, automatically is part of your cue stack. In a staging concept, what I can actually do is bring that in, test some changes in blind, work with that, and then decide if I want to commit that in there using the augmented visualization to really see exactly what's going on and where that all is and how that plays together. So lots of fun new things. Also working with highlight and different options inside of Augmented. At this point then, when I jump back into blind, back into live from blind, I can really see all of that and play around. Now, a couple things I didn't talk about. We do also have some options for zoom to selection, some pre-made different views up here, the ability to change your ambient light levels, change your haze levels. These are just quick selects inside of settings. You can spend quite a bit more time with these and really perfect them to exactly what you're looking with and record that. So all of this is going to be saved directly into the EOS show file. It'll just be an extension of that. You won't have separate show files. There will be import and export options if you want that, but different controls inside of there. All right, any questions on that part of Augmented? Yes?
I got a bit of a list, but
Oh, okay.
biggest thing, so like you have a blind spreadsheet, are you able to kind of blind multiple views at the same time so you can see you have a set of views if you want to kind of see everything?
So simultaneously see multiple cues in different frames or anything like that? Nothing right now, but it's an interesting concept. One of the great things about Augmented is we're building this world, and now we can add all sorts of different modules and pieces into that. Yeah. Do you have some other ones? I'll get you guys in just a second.
Yeah. Are there any issues with running a Vectorworks LightBright link at the same time as an Augment?
All right. So the question was running a Vectorworks and LiveLink and Augmented all the live long day. Right now, we're taking a look at that, but we haven't seen anything yet. Definitely something we're going to want to take a look at as we get closer to some open betas and public betas.
And Vectorworks focus points?
Vectorworks focus points will be part of our LiveLink import. Sorry?
Origin, what use the Vectorworks origin?
By default, we're going to bring in objects to whatever origin they were drafted in if the file format supports that. Some file formats are better than that, or better at that than others, but you can always just reposition everything to whatever origin you need.
So that stick beam function you had, does that also respect highlight? Or can you kind of next and last two fixtures on highlight?
If you are in selection, then stick beam selection mode, then it would absolutely follow highlight. Yeah.
Let's see. Are you able to have independent users for multi-console environments?
Independent users in the augmented concept. So right now, what we're taking a look at for when you're in a multi-user content is giving everybody the ability to have their own augmented with their own view. But we're still working out exactly how that's going to work out. But yeah, we definitely want to do something. We've also tossed some ideas around about be able to, in a multi-user system, say, let me see your augmented. Okay, you can see my augmented view. Share that sort of position information back and forth. Still roughing in exactly how that's going to work, but yeah.
How are the graphics libraries working out? Like specifically with like kind of creative stuff like Prism, it's like really a true edge. The Robies like flower effects and their crazy prisms that they have. How are those rendering? Or are they kind of like?
Sure. So the graphic engine, if I understood your question right, we are really concentrating as a 3D programming tool. So true photorealistic representation is not our primary goal. We really want to make the tools and the ease of use the primary thing we want to focus on, get you into it, get you using it. That being said, we're going to do everything we can to make it look as realistic as possible. So let's talk a little bit about profiles, actually, because I think it might help with your question. So at first release, there's about 70 different profiles that we've selected that will have a sort of augmented, specialized profile. It's the same profile in EOS, we've just added a little bit more information to it. This is very similar to how we've done color calibration in some fixtures. So some fixtures are perfectly color calibrated, some are more estimations. For anything outside of those 60 or 70 fixtures, there are a ton of generic options, so you'll still be able to use them. They might not just be 100% accurate. And that's just where we're getting started. As we continue to work on that, we'll add more and more pieces. It's been really interesting taking a look at how that works because we're starting to find out what manufacturers do and don't know about their own fixtures, including some of ours. We had to go and do a whole bunch more learning on our fixtures. So getting that information is a little tricky, but as we continue to work on and get that more and more in place, we'll work with it. And just like any EOS profile, there'll always be opportunities for you to modify it or correct it if our generic profile doesn't quite work for you. All right, I'm going to jump over here, and then I'll shoot your question.
Can you store something like, let's call it scenes in Augment? Like, for example, I have in my Act 1, I have my flybar 10 with 10 units on it at a height of, let's say, 6 meters, and in Act 2, I have it at 12 meters or anything.
So the question was whether or not we can sort of preset positions inside of Augmented and change them on the fly. There are a couple different options for that. The most prominent one is we're going to have the ability to basically associate any particular object to a channel and then make changes with XYZ. But what's really fantastic about that is you can actually merge objects together. So let's say I just have my pipe, and then as part of that is the parent for all of my other channels. I can just set that up as the parent, just move the pipe, and it'll automatically move everything else.
But that means you have to double your channels, more than double your channels actually, because you have like your real channel, which is actually controlling the light, and your augment channel, which is controlling the properties of the light at a given time.
So what our hope for that is you can pick sort of relationship points. So just have the pipe. So all you need is the one channel for the pipe and not one for each individual channel. That's good. In the back? Yes, you.
So with more complicated rigs, including moving trussing and things like that, is there any integration for things like StationNet or?
Yeah, perfect. Those two went really well together. So not at first release. At first release, you could use something like Lightstrike, which takes PosiStage and incorporates into OSC. We've been working with Dan on that, but absolutely in a future release. We want to target a couple different things. PosiStage is absolutely one of them. The new 159, I think. Thank you. Oh, Michael's in the back. I see Michael nodding his head. He would know. 159 is the sort of ESTA standard for position. As soon as that becomes a little bit more of a real thing, we'll definitely be working with that. The other thing we want to do is directly integrate with any of our rigging systems so we can know exactly where those positions are. That'll be coming down a little bit later than the first release, but absolutely on our to-do list. Cool. All right, any other questions with that before we jump? You got one more? Yeah, what do you got?
Is there any talks about having a kind of vetted library of venues, especially for kind
Ooh. So we've talked about that, yes. There absolutely have been talks. So the question was whether or not we could have some sort of global vetted library of different venues. Every time I bring that up, our legal team kind of starts shaking a little bit. It's not outside the realm of possibility, but it's not something we're going to work on right off the first bat. That being said, nothing to stop you guys from sharing all your information together, and we would definitely encourage that. There's some interesting liability and security safety things about that we're not going to quite get into yet, but we'll see what we can do. Yeah?
Just a general form function question. So it's all hierarchical based object layout. So like the question about you have a pipe with lights on it.
Yeah, let's take a look at that.
So your pipe is your parent channel, and then you adjust the height of that pipe, and every child that follows.
Exactly.
So then you have a control channel, like you were saying, in your desk that controls your pipe, and then so you only have that one channel dealing with the pipes and visibilities and stuff like that.
Yep. Absolutely. So to create that hierarchy, I can actually come in here and let's just say, hey, these two tables should always be moved together. So I can actually just merge that in. We have two different concepts here. We have the concept of folders, and we have the concept of parent-child. Folders are just grouping them together. Parent-child actually have that full associations together. So now if I come in and grab this table, notice it's got both pieces, and when I grab them, they're always going to move in unison together. Yeah, and if I had that command coming from an external channel, it would have reacted the exact same way.
And the folder doesn't have
No, the folder is more just like, hey, I want to put all of my channels in a folder for my front of house or my back of house. You know, nothing's really changing here. It's just an organizational tool for you. We do also have some options for some query folders. And a query folder actually allows you to make sort of on-the-fly variable-based folders to sort of like the smart folders in some of our other programs to nest. Yeah, we're looking at sharing tags back and forth. It's also, there's the tag system and the naming conventions that will come back and forth as well. In the back?
So going back to the question about the moving pipe, like for instance, in the middle of the sequence, right?
Sure.
So is the XYZ information something that you'd be able to queue in, or is that something that you're going to have to execute a macro to change the Z pipe in patch?
It is, so at that point, it is channel level data. So the channels that you're using to control the objects will have a channel level XYZ and XYZ rotation. So you do not have to do that with macros for patch in that particular situation. Yep. Cool. Yes?
Do you have to channel all your objects, or can you just put them on there? They don't move or anything like that?
You only channel what you want. So let's actually talk about that. A couple things that spawns. First off, not every channel of Fixture needs to be an augmented. It shows up as soon as you add an XYZ value inside of patch. If you don't add any XYZ values inside of patch, it just won't show up. So if you don't want to put your entire conventional rig in augmented, don't put your entire conventional rig in augmented. If you just want your movers, go for it. We're going to give you complete freedom to choose what pieces you want to add and subtract. For the nodes and the channel movement objects, by default, they're not in there. You actually have to add them in. So we're not going to take away any of your channels unless you want them. And we'll give you full control of what channels it is. Never assume anything like that. You guys get to choose it and create that. Yeah?
Does Augmented allow, or with Augmented, will it allow for there to be additional XYZ effects?
Additional XYZ effects.
So say I want to, currently the way that the linear effects engine works is it's an XY-core. And so if I have a value, it's going to do a value like this. But say I want the value to go from the front of the room to the back of the room.
Sure.
And I don't want to have to do all this crazy programming for it. Is there an option for that?
So this kind of leads into something that I was kind of just curious to see how fast it would come up. With Augmented, we will be introducing a new type of focus palette, which are XYZ palettes. And what that'll allow you to do is choose this point right here as a palette. So you could do something like that with an absolute effect. Yeah, we could do something. So we're going to start keeping within the current constraints of the effects engine, but we can absolutely take a look at some other options. I'm not going to speak for Ann too much on that. We'll see how that plays out. But Ann snuck in the back. I'm in trouble now. So Somebody's gotta. Oh God, Dennis is here too. I'm really in trouble. But basically giving you the tools to work with is absolutely something we're going to do. The concept of an XYZ palette, I think, will get you part of the way there. We can take a look at adding even more of that as we go. With the XYZ palettes, that is going to be sort of a new concept, being able to kind of create sort of like an absolute palette for color, but in moving into, by type in color, but moving that into the focus world, which I think will be really interesting, allowing you to set that particular point as we play. Pretty fun. Cool. Got another one?
So if you focus a point or a light in one, like let's say you focus a light downstage center, and you say, I want the rest of the lights to point there.
XYZ copy 2.
So it's relative to the point, it's not relative to pan.
Yep. Every fixture will now have pan and tilt and XYZ positioning of where it is focused. Yeah, I mean, the other thing, you can do that in sort of like a copy 2 style command, but you can also just come in here and say, hey, I want you, all right there. So you get that sort of on the fly concept as well. That's a really bad place to put those lights. I've learned a lot working on Augmented. Not blinding myself is not one of them. I've gotten quite better at that. All right, cool. So we'll come back to some more questions in a minute, but I want to take a moment and talk about another thing we're adding to that, and that is some changes that are coming to the Android and iOS remotes we'll take a look at. So first things first, we got to do just a tiny little bit of setup. So what we're going to do here is we are going to have a series of augmented reality targets. And these are basically schwanky QR codes. So there will be 10 of these. 5 of them are a little bit more stylized. 5 of them are a little bit more QR code-ish, which will be a little bit more accessible. These will ship with every new console. They will be printable from Augmented, or we'll have an option with some printed on really nice durable material that you can purchase, whichever the 3 options you'd like. If you'd like to buy a new console just to get one of these, our sales guys are waiting outside. All right, so what I am going to do here is I have put that at a known position. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to add a reference point in. And this is going to be for my AR target. And I'm just going to come over here and I'm going to select which image I'm using. The reason we're giving you 10 is so that you can hide them anywhere you want in your venue and have them readily available. So we want to make sure that you never have to walk too far to finding one of these. And I'll just come over and place this right on my corner. This is definitely one of those places where you want to try and get as accurate as possible. And that's a little too far. We'll go right about there and drop that down.
Can you go into 2D views?
We do have some perspective in 2D views, indeed. Yeah.
Or, well, truly orthogonal, not perspective.
Yes. Sorry, perspective or orthogonal. So there's orthogonal, there's perspective. We're working on making those a little bit more accessible right now. All right, so I have now placed this. I've chosen which one it is, and I have now set that inside. So what I'm going to do here is come over to my phone. So right off the bat, this will be Android and iOS. I always forget Android just because I'm an iOS guy, but it will absolutely be there. Let's turn over to the phone here. And not unplug that. That will not be helpful. All right, so the only thing that I have plugged in here is just a HDMI feed out. Theoretically, there it is. All right, so we're going to launch the IRF app, connect into my console, and I'm now going to go to this new WAN tab. Hi, everybody. We're going to come over and just do a quick little scan just to orient the AR. And now I can just scan this particular object, and it just takes a second. There it is. And at this point, I can now look up and I can find my fixtures. Oh, those are a little low. I've drifted a little bit. I can control their intensity with a gesture. So that's just a top to bottom swipe. We also have some options for zoom with pinch and pull. And I can say, I would like those pointed right there. Let me just home these real fast so we can see them a little bit easier. And now I can say, I would like these focused wherever I want. And I can place this at any point. So anywhere that we have an intersection inside the augmented engine, I can now point at and choose to focus. Now, one of the really cool things about this is your hand and your eye really accommodate to it, and accuracy doesn't become quite as important because I'm looking at wherever the light actually is, and that might not be the exact point that my phone is pointing at, but as I'm moving this around, I can really work with getting it into any place I want. So that's one mode, and that is our wand. We also have a secondary mode, which is called Find Me, and that very aptly finds me. And so our hope is you can come into a space, put down a floor, because all you need is a floor, really quickly focus those 4 positions to tell us where all of your lights are, and say, great, lights on me, focus palette 1. Yeah, I'm just going to move out there. You guys get the idea. Focus palette 2. Focus palette 3, and move, and now I've lost my channel selection. Sorry, I hit the wrong button there. Let me just grab that back real fast. And just move everything around, place them wherever I want, and have all the different control options. Now, we're using the same tools that they're called ARKit and ARKarCore. This is the same thing that like the Pokemon Go, the new Harry Potter augmented reality games are using. The Measure app on iOS, all the different options. And what's great about that is as that continues to get better, so do we. There are some interesting things with augmented reality. The first one is, if I go like this, I have now just completely lost where I am in the space. Because what we actually do is when you scan in here, at that given moment, we know exactly where the phone is based off of the size of the target as displayed in the camera. We know how big it is, therefore we know how far away it is and its angle. We then can detect all the different movements using the accelerometer, the inclinometer, all of the different tools inside of here. But if you go like this real fast, you've now completely lost it. That's one of the reasons that we want to have those 10 different points all around your space. So anytime that you might have a little bit of a variation in your accuracy, it's really easy to just come back over and say, great, I'm right here, scan that back in, and now we're good to go and start playing around with it. So we also know that there are certain places where it would be bad for someone who's not at the console to control this. So we've added another feature which allows you to say, from the console, find the phone. I've jokingly labeled that the FindMyDesigner feature. So giving us the ability to come in and send the command, not just from, I'm trying to find these and turn them off so I can see you all. And again, this is built just into regular IRFR, ARFR, so I could very easily just switch over to the rest of it and have the full set of commands from the device. But yeah, just giving us that ability to not only locate our device, do that. Now you can also do that for conventionals, not just the moving lights. I can look up, I can see, hey, which fixture is that? We're looking at ways to transmit. Right now we can send channel label, channel number, and the location. We're also looking at things like, hey, wouldn't it be cool if I could look up and see if there is an AF error for my sensor rack or an RDM error for that fixture, be able to really use this as a way to troubleshoot it. In the future, something like looking up and saying, hey, there's my gateway. Let's go ahead and change the port on that. Again, now that we've built the world, we can do all sorts of different things to that. Question in the back over there, yeah.
How much does the phone hardware matter?
How much does the phone hardware matter? It's a little bit of a tricky question. So we do require it to have ARKit or ARKarCore, which is the minimum requirements. That is pretty much every Android and iOS phone made in at least the last 2 years. Some of them go a little bit older. We will have a minimum iOS requirement and Android level requirement. We'll publish all that. Right now it's iOS 11. We're trying really hard to keep that. However, I will say I have a XR. I have a couple of 7s in my bag. The XR does definitely work better. And it's just as the Android and iOS phones progress, they get a little bit better at what they're working with. So we'll have some minimum requirements. It's just like anything. There always will be something a little bit better the day you buy it. So one of the big things that we want to do here, and I'll get to your question in just a second, because I'm guessing this question is going to come up. No, we are not targeting human tracking. This comes up every time I talk about this, and there's a really good reason for that. There are a lot of really great products out there that do that. This is a consumer level device, not a professional level device when it comes to accuracy and latency. And what we really wanted to concentrate was putting this in your hands and not having to make you go and buy a ridiculously expensive tracking system or something like that. So we're really focusing on using this as a focus tool. It's using focus way too many times in a sentence. But we don't want to quite get into that, although Dennis has a great idea of strapping one of these to a Roomba and just seeing what happens at the factory. And we totally have to do that. Someday will consumer level devices get to that level of latency and that level of accuracy? Maybe. But for right now, that's really what we're targeting. Question, yeah. Yes, you.
So in terms of load on the desk's processor and video card and such, is it active, right? Like, when is it actively rendering the 3D model, right? So like, if the tab is open but you're not targeted, is it still running it? Like, you do.
Sure. So remember that a lot of that is GPU versus CPU. So we shouldn't have a lot of impact on your programming speed or your data output, but it's definitely something we're keeping an eye on. What was that, Ann?
It will have no impact on your data output.
Yeah, it should have none at all. That's something we're very much keeping an eye on and why we put some of the limitations of the hardware. In the back?
Will it work with ETC pad?
Unfortunately, it will not work with ETC pad. ETC pad does not have any of the augmented reality stuff inside of it, any of the ARKarCore. Yeah.
Are there any potential issues getting to like network load between communication between any ETC networks?
So the question was if there's any concerns about network load. Not really. It's definitely something we're keeping an eye on as systems get bigger and bigger, but nothing that Augmented in particular would be adding in. Yeah.
What about multiple user AR interface? Like you have two assistants that are running through different focus
Sure.
points on stage, and I'm setting other stuff down.
So multiple users, remember that the IRFR and AFR all have a user number associated, just like any other console. We're going to follow those exact same rules. So if you're having the FindMyDesigner feature, you actually specify which user you're focusing on. If you have two phones set to the same user, yes, you could potentially have some oddities, but just make sure you set those as unique IDs and you should be fine.
But I could have two different users programming two different profiles and wash fixtures, each setting different focus points.
Yeah, it's going to follow all the same rules as partitions and some of the existing stuff we have inside the desk. Absolutely. Yeah.
Do you plan to have the phone features out in time for the 3.0 beta or only with the full release?
It will be part of the 3.0 beta. Yeah, the phone features. It's going to be a little interesting for us to do that because we've never really coordinated that in the entertainment world. We've done that a couple times in the architectural world. So iOS is a little bit easier. They just let us do that. Android, we might have to get an email address and associate it with a beta, but we'll figure all that out when we announce it's time for beta.
How does this scale to large scale venues?
So our test bed in regards to scaling has been a minimum 100 fixture rig. And we also have a couple test beds that are up in the more 400, 500, 600 fixture range. And it's been working pretty great. Eventually you'll get a point where graphics-wise you're going to want to go to an external processing. That's why we are doing some of the restrictions of medium and low on the actual hardware. We can get all the way up to ultra settings on the external.
But thinking like really accuracy towards throw distances when you're like front of house and like projection booth balcony rail for me is like anywhere from 120 to 180 feet.
Sure. Yeah, from the ARFR the IRFR or that. We've been doing a lot of testing with longer throws. I haven't seen a huge amount of degradation there. Definitely something we're keeping an eye on and something we want to check a lot in beta.
Cool.
So as we continue to move forward with Augmented most likely being on an external PC, is there any suite of tools to help still have one keyboard and mouse at your workstation instead of two keyboards and two mice?
So the question was, if you're running it on an external machine using two mice or two keyboard, yeah, that's a tricky one. There's, what's that? Yeah, if it's a laptop, it's definitely right in front of you. That helps a little bit. But we have not built in any tools into that yet. It's definitely something we could take a look at, how we want to handle as we get to more and more exposed options. But yeah, no real solutions from us at that point. The KVM switch is always a good one. There are a number of great third-party things for combining keyboard and mouse between two different systems that work surprisingly well. I'm really impressed with how I've seen some of that.
I just want to jump in on that and say that when running it on an external PC, certainly I plan on recording specific views of things. Rather than scrolling around the model a lot, like I'll probably snapshot views
Yeah, that's a great idea. So using snapshots as your navigation tool, because you could do that all from the one piece of hardware. Great idea. Absolutely. Cool. Well, folks, I'm going to be here for the next little bit. We've just got a few minutes left. I want to thank you all very much for coming to CUE. I hope you have had the greatest time as all of us who have helped put this on have. It's been a real pleasure hosting you here. We'll have augments up here for you to play for the rest. Otherwise, have very safe travels home, and thank you very much for coming.